G'day YouTube, welcome back to my channel Bonsai Works. As I promised in a previous video where I restyled this little black pine, it's time to repot it. So remember that I really didn't cut off much foliage at all on this tree. I really just needle plucked the old needles, left everything brown, left all the new candles, which are the most important thing, on the tree. It's currently towards the end of winter now. It's actually warming up quite a bit. So it's a really good time now to repot this tree. This pot, it was very temporary, but I put it in. It is a Japanese pot, but it's a little too heavy for the tree. Now, one thing I've done before doing any work on the tree is there was a lot of moss growing on the nabari and on the base of the trunk. Now, I've actually removed the moss, and it's actually quite impressive how fat this bottom half of the tree is. The tapering isn't the best, like it's really fat, and then it really goes up into the trunk, but I think over time that will improve. Probably the only one drawback, I guess, is there is a very heavy root at the back here, which takes up almost to the lip of the pot. So it's going to a little bit restrict me in terms of the pot I can use. Now, I have been toying with a couple of pots. Of course, this is Japanese. I only really, anything that's of top quality, I only ever repot into Japanese pots or handmade Australian pots. Nothing that I'm going to put in a show will ever go into a Chinese pot. The Japanese pots are far superior, and Australian handmade pots are unbelievably beautiful as well. But in this case, this Japanese black pine will go into a Japanese pot. So I've got a couple of options at the moment I am toying up with. One's a little bit smaller, but I really like it, but I think it's going to be too small. It's almost like a two-tone, beautiful two-tone color. It's really nice, but it doesn't have the depth that I need. I think I'm worried about to be able to catch that back root, and the tree's going to be too far forward in the pot. It's nice and small, just maybe a little bit too small. So my other alternative is another stunning Japanese pot. So I'm just putting it to the side. This beautiful greyish tinge freckled pot. It's quite nice. It's a little bit forward at the moment, looks big in the camera, but it's a much more, the tree will sit nicely in the middle like this, and have enough room for the roots, and it should look quite stunning in this pot, a little bit raised up so the roots can really look really big. So the nabari will look about that high, so that wide in this pot, so it actually should suit it. So I'm thinking this is the pot it's going to go into. It's an absolutely stunning Japanese pot. Like you can't beat that. Look at that. Grey. It's just beautiful. Anyway, everyone knows how much I love Japanese pots. I talk about them all the time, and Australian handmade pots. So stunning. All right. So let's get the tree out of the pot and let's start working on the roots. So usually these pots are a little tricky. They've got this little lip on the top that goes around, and then the roots can go underneath. So it's really hard to just pull this tree out. Like, I get stuck when I do that. So sometimes I just use my root hook and just go around and lifting off some of the soil that's around the side. It sounds terrible, that scraping noise, but I assure you it doesn't do that much damage. It's fine. So I'll try and keep my arm out of the way. So I'm just... Now, one thing you never ever do with black pines is you never ever bare root them. You need to keep some of the old soil. You can't just get rid of all the soil. And washing off the roots is not a good idea, because it contains all the beautiful mycorrhiza fungi that really helps the roots, helps the tree. So we never ever fully bare root it. Now there is partial bare rooting when you're changing over soil, like if it's a really terrible soil, but you only do partial. So you'll do maybe the back half one year, then the front half the next, or the next couple of years. So you've got to do it in stages, but you never do a full bare root of a black pine. So that's pretty good. Come out pretty nice. Oh, what's left behind? Beautiful. See the white? Beautiful white mycorrhiza. Beautiful. Nice healthy tree. So if you find some of that nice white mycorrhiza, just leave it. Don't get rid of it. And you can apply it to the base, to the soil mix that you put it in a bit later. So really, I like to just try and, most of the compactness is in the top half here. So it's very fine up the top here. So I really like to work in the top half in the top base of the tree, because this is where I find it's very compact with fertilizer over the years, and it gets to be fine and compact. So I always like to work in the top bit first, combing the roots out as much as I can, being very careful. And that's what the base of the tree looks like. Really nice, really healthy, really healthy. Really nice white everywhere mycorrhiza, but we've got to actually get some of this off. So I tend to be a bit more cautious. So I will start to, if I need to chop some roots, I will start to cut around and come out slowly. I'm very cautious with black pines. I don't go super hard. I try and very calmly scrape out the roots. So as I'm coming, sometimes I just like to try and cut back some of these roots just to free up the root ball. So I've had to take off quite a bit of roots. Unfortunately, they're really tangled up. There's not too many white ones, which is good. Hasn't really started to shoot off. But I've made a bit of a pad. See, I haven't got more than that. And I left some mycorrhiza at the base. I just got to do a bit more cutting back. But you see, I haven't gone too hard. You don't go bare rooting. You leave some of the mycorrhiza, and you're not too bad. It's mainly the coiled roots that I like to get rid of. And that's good. And I've kept some nice mycorrhiza to the side. I do like to just really try and air out the top half. And we know the bottom's nice and healthy. Just want to air it. Sometimes just try and do this just to get the air through, because I don't really wash this off. Maybe over time we can eventually get rid of all this fine stuff. But yeah, last thing I want to do is wash the roots. Now we're going to get the pot ready, and we'll put the tree in the new pot. So I end up going for that greyish, beautiful greyish one. I think that's going to sit nicely. I put some soil, bonsai mix in there, made a bit of a mound in the middle where I'm going to keep it. I've got some wiring to tie the tree in. I didn't want to go overboard. I can just tie it in at the back, so I can just swoop these around to the back and tie it on that root, so it should be fine. Mound it up in the middle. Now, the bit I do now is I try and take some of this mycorrhiza, even though it's got, and just put it into the soil. I know maybe people saying that's nuts or that doesn't matter, but I like to make sure there's lots of it in there. Just peel it off and find it. I found quite a bit last time. So put it in there, mix it around, just peel it off. I mean, could work, could not work. Some people maybe say yes, but I don't think it harms it, let's put it that way. There's no harm in doing this, so cool. I've got a bit more down here that I'll grab. It's quite nice. Sprinkle it around. All right. Now it's a matter of, this should be pretty straightforward. Cool. Looks pretty nice. I just need to, now I kind of, because I put a mound in it, I need to wiggle it in to really make sure it sits in nicely in amongst the soil that I've just put in. It fits quite nice. And I think that's made in heaven, that match. That looks pretty awesome to me. All right, so I sometimes like to actually try and get some soil into the, before I tie it in, I like to get some soil nicely compacted in before I tie the tree in. Just there seems to be a few too many air gaps, and once I tie it in, I'm not going to get to those gaps. So I try and put some soil in just a little bit, just to get into those gaps. So now I'm just going to tie the tree in. Now the good news is I can put it towards the back, you won't even see it, because I've got this big root that I can tie it against. So now I'll just fill it up, more mix. Make sure I use my fingers and chopstick to make sure all the air bubbles, air holes and the soil really sinks in nicely into the tree. Now you might be wondering what's next, what do we do after this bit? So pretty much the tree gets watered, gets watered, and then just sits back exactly the same spot on the bench that it came from. I think that's come up absolutely beautiful. I think that's a perfect match for me. Perfect tree to match the pot. The width is nice. The bar is more exposed. It's quite a big base, really nice tree. And the pot really is quite nice. Once this bark, I know it's a bit greeny browny at the moment because the moss has come off. But once this bark ages, it goes more of I find they go more grey, black pine. So the grey bark with the greyish pot, I think it's going to look bloody awesome. Couldn't be more happier than this. So very happy. So now, as I said, watered. Once it starts to push the candles, then I'll start feeding. So just a very simple process. Just follow the same process. I will check the tree how it's going in summer, whether I decandle the tree or not. I'll give it a year off just to recover and get its roots really growing. I usually, if I've repotted a tree, I do not decandle the tree that same year. I'll let it rest and just push all candles. And then you kind of lose a year or two in terms of development, but sometimes it needs to just recover. I think this tree is healthy enough. It's got lots of foliage. Shouldn't really struggle at all, and it should just boom on. I can see all the candles are really starting to thicken up. I can see them everywhere. They just need to elongate, become candles. I'll see how big they are. Might just cut them back, and then early in the growing season, and then let the second flush come out. We'll see how it happens. But I'm just going to water this tree and then put it back on the bench, and that's really it. Hope you enjoyed that. Just remember those little tips. I think don't go bare rooting the tree. Keep some of the mycorrhiza. I think it's important. This tree needed those coiled roots removed. There's nothing I can do. I had to get rid of those. Still had a nice big compact root ball that's going to be good. And then just make sure you let the tree recover. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed that video, and we'll see you again soon.